right, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens, going through the AFC North now. With the Ravens, you went wide receiver for their biggest need.
Yeah. I mean, as is ever the case, the Ravens need number one wide receivers. There's definitely a question about, like, just because of the way that offense has been built.
Do they actually need that, right?
But remember, they're also another team that's going in a different direction, presumably, based off change of coach. So the previous Baltimore offense is not quite the Baltimore offense that's going to be the case going forward. Also, by the way, they don't have Lamar Jackson under contract yet, so who the hell knows?
Maybe that's the biggest need.
Right,
first.
what this offense looks like. But assuming Lamar Jackson is back, which I think is very likely, I think at this point, again, we've been saying this for years, like, just give the guy a number one receiver and see what happens. I don't think Marquise Brown has been that guy. Mark Andrews is their number one receiver, but he's a conventional tight end. Like, I just think, let's see what happens if you plug an elite wide receiver into the system.
It's fair to ask, okay, how much do they actually need playmakers versus, say, other teams? We kind of had this discussion with Justin Fields on the NFC show. But even if it's not the same as, when we say Dallas, go get 3 wide receivers. You were so much better when you had 3 legitimate options, really 4. Maybe the Ravens, Mark Andrews is 1. Lamar Jackson is 2, right, as a playmaker. But you still need another guy to throw to, right? I mean, the point is to have multiple options for the defense to account for. And how does the defense account for Lamar Jackson, the runner, Mark Andrews off of play action in the middle of the field, and then the outside receiver? I thought they were onto something when they had Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman and even Sammy Watkins, like Watkins as a 3 a couple years ago, but they couldn't stay on the field at the same time. Bateman has just been in and out of the lineup.
Yep.
Maybe he's the guy, but you don't want to just rely on him as the guy, right? You want Bateman plus someone else. So I'm absolutely with you there. And we don't know if the system's going to be different with Greg Roman out, right? Maybe we're seeing more under center play action type of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we're seeing more gun, zone read type of stuff with Lamar rather than all the pistol stuff that
It's a
they've done.
fascinating offseason for them because I think what Greg Roman did to build the Lamar Jackson offense initially was really smart. They're running a conventional NFL offense with Joe Flacco, and then away in the background in the basement, they're building this offense that's going to be unique to Lamar Jackson based off the skill set that he brings to the table that nobody else in the NFL does. But I don't know if they've sort of effectively asked the question over the years, how much can this evolve back towards something that's more recognizable in every other offense in the league, and how much do we need to sort of stick with this not gimmicky offense, but offense that's very different because Lamar needed that when he was a rookie or needed that really early in his career. Does he still need that kind of offense now? Maybe we can sort of evolve this thing and tap into more of what he can do as a passer in addition to the run threat and all that kind of thing.
We have a hard lock.
Hard lock.
Is that good?
Hard
Okay.
lock is official.
Hard out and a hard lock. All right, we got that nailed. All right, going through the AFC North, Cincinnati Bengals. You went offensive tackle here.
Yeah.
Why'd you go offensive tackle?
Because Jonah Williams gave up 12 sacks this year. It's quite a lot.
Jonah Williams, heading into 2023, they have Lyle Collins as the starting right tackle.
Yeah.
We have Jonah Williams heading into is it the last year of his deal?
Must be, right?
Right. We stay with a potential 5th-year option coming out of that. What year was he drafted?
And by the way, Lyle Collins may have been a pretty big upgrade, but the guy had a pass blocking grade this year of 44.2.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I mean, I think they made the right moves, but neither of the tackles played well.
I mean, he's way better than Hakeem Adeniji, but
right.
Like, A, Lyle Collins has dealt with quite a lot of injuries in his career. B, I don't think he's the player he was earlier in his career because of those. So I'm not saying you replace him next year, but I certainly wouldn't mind contingency, again.
Jonah Williams missing his first full season, messing with my brain. So he'll be playing on his 5th-year option this year. So he's in line for either, getting re-signed, or the Bengals moving on.
And those 12 sacks led the league, right? 13 if you include the playoffs. I mean, Jonah Williams was the one guy that essentially they didn't touch from the offseason. They're like, we'll upgrade 4 other spots on the offensive line, but Jonah's okay. Jonah's solid, and he had been, but he wasn't this year. He was below average, and he was a problem at times.
Continuing to add tackle depth certainly wouldn't hurt in Cincinnati, right? The couple things that can derail their season would be below average offensive line play.
Yeah.
And we saw that even though it was in the Super Bowl and in the AFC Championship the last couple of years, it did come back to bite at some point. The other one that has to be an obvious need is safety. Jesse Bates and Von Bell, both free agents. even Eli Apple at corner. So you're talking about the secondary in general as a need. But I part of the reason why I think we liked the Bengals draft last year is it felt like it was forward-looking, right? Drafting Daxton Hill and
I think
Cam
Hill
Taylor
definitely
Britt.
steps into one of those spots. Taylor Britt maybe takes that role as well.
Yeah, so there was contingency there, and it was smart by the Bengals, right? When you have – I loved their offseason last year, even though they fell short, right? Didn't make it back to the Super Bowl. They addressed the offensive line, and it felt like they drafted like a good team drafts, which is with a year ahead in mind when it comes to need. I push back on drafting for need all the time, but drafting for
future
a year ahead needs, smart, right? That's what the Bengals did. So on paper, safety's a need. It may be corner, but it seems like they do have the right people to fill in there.
Yep.
So I don't mind that as tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, I lost my spot in the AFC North. I know it's the Browns.
It is the Browns.
Defensive tackles has to be where you went. Yep, interior defensive line for the Browns.
Yeah,
I knew that one.
Yeah.
This need's been.
That's one of the worst. One of the worst
of
individual position
groups.
An
issue for a couple of years.
Not just on the team, but like in any team in the NFL, their interior's been catastrophic for years now.
I'm pro analytics and all that stuff. This felt like if I was building a team, I might have made the same mistake that the Browns made, where I neglected it and kind of made it, the last part.
Look at that. Doctor risen
He's
from
alive.
the dead.
Dr. Eager's alive. Look at him.
The late Dr. Eager.
We're live. You want to say hi? Eric says hi.
Says hi
Eric
from the
says
distance.
Hi, Thomas. Good to see you.
I don't even know that it was a mistake necessarily. I think they actually constructed this thing the right way. It just didn't work out. They sort of attacked pass defense ahead of anything else. And I don't know that this is proof that actually pass rush is more important than pass coverage or even affects that dynamic. I think the players they had on the back end simply didn't perform at the standards we expected them to. What I do think is interesting, though, is I think you brought this up before, that in basketball there's a lot of studies on how specific players interplay and the kind of the effect they have on each other in addition to themselves. Like Myles Garrett is individually playing as well as any defensive lineman in the NFL. We're talking this year, everybody's focused on Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons and maybe Chris Jones. And I think Garrett is playing as well as any of those guys, if not better. But the situation around him on that defensive line is so bad that it doesn't matter. And we track these things, these plays of individual pass rush wins that don't get to become pressure because the ball's gone, right? Before he can affect the quarterback. Garrett has led the NFL in those for the last couple of years. And I think that is a product of nobody alongside him is winning. So the number of plays or the number of wins that he has that don't affect the quarterback is disproportionately high. So simply improving the situation inside of him immediately makes his performance more effective. Because all of a sudden, maybe 20 of those plays where he wins actually do become pressure because there's somebody 3 yards closer to the quarterback inside him than there is now. I think attacking the interior not just increases the effectiveness of the defensive line, but I think it might immediately increase the effectiveness of Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. The way that they got here, I thought was probably sound, right? It was third-round draft picks. That is a decent spot to go grab interior defensive linemen, so they're not using premium picks, bringing a Taven Bryan in for a year at $4 million and all that stuff, but nobody played well. None of those guys actually hit. I think there's probably an opportunity in free agency for the Browns, not necessarily to make a splash, not to reverse course on the entire strategy, but guys like Sheldon Rankins, David Onyemata, Zach Allen, who had that really good year for Arizona this year as kind of an interior and edge type of player. They can get those guys somewhat relatively cheap here.
Onyemata would be a really interesting buy low candidate because he's had some really good seasons in the past. Is coming off a bad year. The Saints collectively on the defensive front did not play well. I don't know how much that affects his price tag, but if it kind of drove it down for free agency, if that can combat the fact that it's not a great free agent class, and maybe that boosts it back up. But if you can get him for a cheap price, I think that's potentially a steal.
What they didn't do is get involved in the discussion last year was the Jordan Davis discussion, right? Where Jordan Davis is going to come in and, even though he hasn't made a huge impact for the Eagles, but the theory was this 340-pounder is going to come in here, eat the doubles, and push the pocket, and that's going to help everyone else. The Browns haven't gone down that route. I'm curious to see if they do try to overcorrect a little bit and go down that path and really attack this position a ton heading into the offseason. The chat's trying to say that I'm sucking up to GMs here.
No.
I'm just trying to be cordial. I'm just trying to be nice to Thomas and Eric and everybody that's,
Thomas Dimitroff,
yeah,
former NFL GM.
Former. I mean, what can he do for me now?
What is he now? What's his thing at Sumer? Current guy at Sumer?
Like the guy under the owner.
CEO.
The guy under the owner, the CEO.
The guy under the owner.
Yeah. The guy below the billionaire at Sumer. All right, let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers here, where you went corner for the biggest need.
Yeah.
Get my guy Pony on here to talk some Steelers.
Get the Pony on.
He's got Kenny Pickett as the next Joe Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess Brock Purdy was the next Tom Brady, so it's no crazier than that.
It's the golden era
Yeah.
of the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw this year that Pittsburgh's defensive front still has teeth, whether it's a healthy T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward. We said hey to Cameron Hayward at the opening night last night.
He's over there?
Yeah.
What's he doing there?
He was interviewing people.
Oh, of
he was
course.
media.
Naturally.
He was with us. He was media. He said he appreciates us.
Oh, that's
Now,
good.
obviously, he didn't say that on camera where people could see, but he said it.
He appreciates the
It's on the
89.8
record.
grade last year.
Collectively, as media, us and him. It's on the record.
I noticed players with blue grades are more appreciative of PFF, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, but anyway,
We
Cameron
might
Hayward.
talk about that tomorrow.
Cameron Hayward is still legit. T.J. Watt is still legit. But I think one of the things last season showed us was how important the kind of relationship is between pass rush and coverage, right? And if one of them stinks, the other one is going to suffer. It's a symbiotic relationship. They both need to hold up their end of the bargain. And the Steelers' corners just weren't good enough for that pass rush to really get home as often as it should and make that kind of impact. I think if you can upgrade that corner spot from like average, below average to good at a couple of spots, you're in a much better spot.
It's another team. I didn't hate their process at the position.
I mean, look, they got Levi Wallace. I'm
They
always
got
going
your
to love
guy.
that.
I'm all and my guy's Akilla Witherspoon, right? He's like the Nelson Aguilar of corners, where if you go through a season, you can pick out two good ones, and then everything else not so good.
Nelson Aguilar of corners.
That's what he is, right? That's what everybody. You have to be a listener of the PFF NFL podcast or a viewer to understand these references.
There you go, Jason in the chat. Pickett versus Purdy, the new Manning versus Brady.
Oh yeah, clearly. Even though Steelers Niners Super Bowl next year, it's what's happening. And then they took a shot on William Jackson with a trade for nothing.
Yep.
I love the process there, right?
Sure.
Bringing in all those guys who have been good at one point. But your main point is you got to be better there.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
they
You
took
just
a
have
few
to be
swings
better.
at it. They were trying to get to a sort of above average line and didn't quite hit it. So I think if you don't reach that point, you got to get there, however it takes. And maybe sometimes it's going to take being more aggressive or committing a little bit more investment money-wise or draft pick-wise to get there. But you need to get there because last year wasn't good enough. That's really the bottom line.